Hello Netrunners, welcome to my latest installment of How to Train Your Dragon, the inner dragon of runners that destroys horizontal corp decks. If you have been watching my previous video with Haley, I was talking about teching against horizontal decks and how Imp Recursion has, spoiler alert, not done very well. So I left off with notes saying that instead of attacking the remotes, you should instead think of going full on assaulting the centrals, and this is exactly what I'm trying to do here. So I basically started out with the old but good prepaid Kate shell. I know it's a boring deck, but hear me out. I started tweaking it to make it much faster because you're dropping the lucky finds and prepaid voice pads because you cannot afford the influence. And what I found is, at the end of the day, my final deck ended up only having less than 2/3 of its cards, matching that of the old prepaid Kate deck, pre-most wanted list. So what helps it go faster? Hyperdrivers give you so many clicks early on. As I mentioned in the Haley video, when you're trashing assets, you are trading click for click versus the corp. Hyperdriver gives you many more clicks in the corp, allows you to set up that much faster. Combined with early burst economies such as Dirty Laundry that allow you to poke centrals for free, to even come out ahead in poking centrals. And stuff like modder into RNDI, that's your main win condition, a form of RND access that is not messed up by the corps playing Cyberdex Virus Suite or Jackson Howard if you're playing Keyhole. RNDI is very reliable but very expensive. Modded helps solve that problem. So we are playing Kate to get leverage her good early money because a lot of our installs cost either 1 credit or 4 credits. Both of which Kate can deal with for free. Now my opponent starts off with an advanced assembly lines, and as I wait for him to assemble it here, my first 2 draws, looking at my 7 card hand, what we install from here, pretty obvious. You want to get the money out, which is daily cast, and then the hyperdriver to hyperdrive your next turn. Hyperdrivers will always be sacked the very next turn. I am not running. I could run Notoriety in this deck. It's definitely a flexible card that's worth including. But otherwise, there's not much other synergy with the Hyperdriver. The main thing with Hyperdriver is to get your early SMC going, to get your early Proco going. Because with 3 extra clicks, using Proco for those 3 clicks is actually a very good rate of return. So now I just draw up a couple of cards. And since I'm pretty low on money, I'm going to play the Dirty Laundry Archives. This is not the best use of it. It's an easy mark. I'll take it. Then what do I play here? Employee Strike at this point is very tempting, but with his 2 eyes remote, I'm just very afraid that he would simply throw an agenda in the remote and then score it the next turn, giving me very little use out of my Employee Strike. So I could click through the Victor here, but that means I have to ditch a lot of cards from my hand, and I don't want to do that. I also don't really want to install the Proco here because it won't do me anything this turn. So I do play the Employee Strike in the end, which I think is a mistake because it's very easy for the corp here to say, hey, I'm just going to try to install and advance an agenda this turn. And I think what's in Silver 2 right now is an agenda, and as you can see from my hand, there's absolutely no way I'm going to be able to contest that. So instead, I'm just going to Proco up, and I see a wonderful card. Again, Hyperdriver. This is basically Diesel for Kate, but it's a lot better once you have Proco. If you have a Proco, it's a Diesel that gives you 3 credits when you play it. It's that good. So, Hyperdriver hits the table, and I run the last remote in case it's a Jackson. I don't want him to get a free ABT Jackson out. So he does score the ABT. Nope, it's a Vitruvius. Thank goodness. And ABT firing at this point could seriously hamper my game. So, I'm going to fire off the Hyperdriver to get the 3 credit Diesel out. After drawing 2 cards, I realized that I don't really want to draw that many cards because I have drawn into an RNDI, and I really want to dig RND, take advantage of this moment when he's still pretty poor. And then I install the Mimic because I know that HB runs Architect, and sure enough, I got past the face check and saw the next bronze and a product recall. So this is what's so good about Hyperdriver. It gives me so much space to do so many things in my turn. I could install my RND digging tool, which he didn't expect because it was in my hand. He couldn't have seen that coming. Then I installed the Mimic, which would get past the Architect gear check. If I install the Mimic the turn earlier, he might be tempted to further ice up R&D to prevent me from running R&D safely. And then I managed to run R&D for 2 accesses with 2 clicks to spare in case that I hit an Eli or an Ichi. So you see how having 7 clicks on a turn makes it so much easier to play. And I can lift off my economy right here because I have the Proco into the Sure Gamble. That gives me a lot of money. But I don't really feel safe running R&D at this point. Not without some extra clicks to ensure me against the Ichi. So instead I'm going to install clone chip SMC, a very standard install combination from old prepaid Kate days. You install the clone chip first to use up Kate's ability. Then you install the SMC so that it doesn't consume Kate's ability. Alright. So now he might have another agenda in the remote. Do I go for it? Seems pretty tempting. Nope, I go for R&D instead because I'm pretty sure I can get past whatever's on R&D with an SMC and Mimic. Next bronze. So he's on next dice, as you know. I'm gonna bring the Sai out. Zoo Keymaster's another option, but if I bring out Zoo and he reses more next dice, I'll be forced to start paying to pump Zoo's strength. So R&D Sai just makes more sense. Also deters him from putting more code gates on R&D. So that should thin down the ice density on the number of ice protecting R&D. I see a Chrysium Grid of all things. Chrysium Grid doesn't really affect this deck too much. Because R&DI is so reliable, it doesn't really get punished by Chrysium Grid at all, so that's good. He reses a launch campaign, very iffy. You would think that HB decks usually go for Adonis. This guy, and Eve campaigns for that matter. This guy's enjoying his launch campaign. Makes you wonder whether it's worth trashing. By the end of the day, it only costs 2 to trash, so why not? I will try to go for it. And I do have access to clone chip to SMC, so why not? Alright, so I install the dog here because I really don't want to bring the dog out from clone chip SMC when I have it in hand. So I run into a pop-up window. Pop-up in HB. Pretty odd. Oh, that's not very nice. Okay, continuing on, I see an Eli 1.0. That's easy to break with the newly installed dog. So not too bad. I'm actually always one step of my opponent. I'm always installing the correct breaker before getting to the remote, into the server. And I, of course, trash his launch campaign. Sure, that leaves me broke, but I do have 2 dirty laundries in my hand to get up to speed, and now even a stim hack. David goes in the heap, so I can instant tutor it with clone chip. And my opponent is poor as well. He's also playing quite predictably. Look at the upgrade on HQ. I wonder what that is. One thing's for sure, it doesn't really affect me. Or maybe it does. I'm actually running Polop in this deck, so yes, the Chrysium Grid on HQ actually makes it a bit harder to get the Polop installed. And I know I do want Polop against him because Caprice Ash is a thing. Although with the pop-up influence, I'm starting to wonder if he's running Caprice. Anyway, I draw into more money, so at this point I'm thinking to myself, maybe I should use up my dirty laundry on R&D. Nope, I'm going for HQ instead. I want to destroy that Chrysium Grid on HQ with Fire and Ichor. Ha ha ha. No, it's not worth it. I'm just pretending right here. 2 things. Firstly, there's a very good chance that his agenda flooded by this point because he hasn't really used any Jacksons and has only scored 1 agenda. Although I really should be checking his remote as well. Secondly, hopefully this leaves him in a state of paranoia, forcing him to doubly ice up HQ. This deck doesn't really want to run HQ all that often, so if I can divert his eyes from R&D and the remote to HQ, I'm doing a good job. And sure enough, he seems flooded. I have an advanced contact hopper in my hands, and I trash the Chrysium with the stim hack money. I also use the stim hack money to fetch the David in the meantime to make the most out of my stim hack run. I did click through the Victor, spending my entire turn on it, which meant that I have no clicks left to install the Pollock. Which was a really huge pity. I would love to have the Pollock on the table, because that really messes up with my opponent. But that's not the case, and we are now in the state where I'm a little bit poor and I need to get my money going. I'm saving those dirty laundries as far as possible for running R&D. I don't really want to be using them just for easy marks. If I'm using the dirty laundry, I should be trying to get a run out of it. So at this point, I'm probably going to draw it with Proco and install the 2 resources from my hand. That seems like the most logical move if I don't want to use my dirty laundries. The Victor 1.0 on HQ is proving to be a real nasty bugger. Because I'm running the combination of Sai and Zuki Master, and my Sai is really locked onto R&D, there's no real good way of me getting through HQ. So props to my opponent. He actually did a very good job of securing HQ right there. It's very unpalatable to spend 2 clicks going through HQ. It's very unpalatable getting a zoo out and still paying 4 credits per HQ run. No way. No way. So yeah, that's way too expensive for this deck. Look at my econ situation. I can't afford to spend that much money just to get HQ access and a Polop install. Not worth it. I mean, if I go down to 0 credits and I have a Polop, what's the use? I can't fire the Polop anyway, if I don't have enough credits to trash his upgrades or assets. Another thing to note, I'm trying to keep him poor as well. A rich corp is bad because a rich corp just stacks Nyx dice on R&D, and you know you cannot have that. Once he gets 2 Nyx silvers on R&D, I'm doomed. I do not run a parasite in this deck. Nyx dice is an Achilles heel for this deck. I'm basically hedging on the fact that most of the top tier horizontal corps nowadays, like NEH, like IG, don't really run ice that you really want to parasite. Sorry, did I say IG? I meant HB. HB, you don't really run ice that you want to parasite. But next ice goes contrary to that, so that's a problem. Anyway, I finally found my console. Astrolabe's out. I didn't play it though. What I really wanted to do here, well, I didn't really want to ditch any of the cards in my hand, so I had to forfeit one of my dirty laundries. Anyway, I'm somewhat rich now with the daily cast still ticking down, so it's fine. But back to my point. Next dice is going to prove to be a very huge trouble for me, and I really want to destroy that launch campaign and remote. But it's the beauty of the pop-up window that prevented me from doing it. I thought to myself, if I run the launch campaign, I would deny him 4 credits. However, by running through the pop-up window, I would give him 1 credit anyway. So either way, he gains either 1 credit or 4 credits. At that point, it's not really worth it anymore for me to lose a dog token for the Eli, 2 credits to get through the ice, and another 2 credits to trash the launch campaign. Basically, the pop-up window skewed the expected value of return on the launch campaign so far that it just wasn't worth it for me to trash. If it weren't Adonis, it was going to be a must trash because Adonises are worth more. Launch campaign, not so. And as such, I was able to divert my resources elsewhere, focus my efforts on getting through R&D instead. That could be a blessing and a curse, we shall see. In any case, I did manage a run on R&D, expending a dog token to get past that silver. Hopefully there are no more next dice, because once the 3rd piece of next ice comes on board, I'm going to have a very tough time. I'll need to find a new dog, and even then, that's only good for 1 R&D run. At this point, I'm seriously considering an Atman on 1. That's how bad it is. Next silvers are all horrible. I need to close out this game before he finds all his next ice. So that is my primary objective. Keep that in mind as we go through this game. Even though I'm using R&D ice instead of burst events like indexing and Maker's Eye, don't make no mistake, this is a deck that wants to go as fast as possible, and the hyperdrivers just reinforce that. You want to win in as few turns as possible, if at all humanly possible. Kate is superhuman, we all know that, so let's do this. First, let's set up some money and my console so that we actually have 1 more memory for the dog that we are about to install from my hand with modded. Beautiful, isn't it? Dog costs 4 to install. With modded and Kate's ability, you get it out for free. Pretty good. I just need to worry about the outermost ice on R&D, which could be an Ichi 1.0, which could be the worst case possible, a next goal. This deck has a very huge blind spot, and it's 4 strength sentries. My Mimic is there, my David is there, they cover every single thing except for 4 strength sentries. And HB has the whole lot of them. You don't want to hit a next goal at this point. 3 net damage could kill you. 3 program trashes is almost irrecoverable from. So I can only hope that he's not running next goal. I don't think he is, because I think most people should be smart enough to realize that next goal is a pretty crappy piece of ice, especially with most people not running prepaid K nowadays. But if he is running next goal, it's going to screw me over really badly. And at this point, I can't really deny him below 8 credits. So now the best thing I can do is to actually install the dog and run R&D first click. At this point, I was searching for my clone chip, because clone chip gives me another out against next goal, which is clone chip Atman 4. That's my only solution. I took the huge risk here, hoping it wasn't an Ichi on the outermost ice, and it wasn't. That could have been a really fatal mistake if it were an Ichi, but turns out it's a next silver. Not the best, but certainly not the worst. Pretty close to the worst though. This means that each R&D run now costs 1 whole lady, 4 dog tokens. Ouch. Next goal, next bronze. It's still 1 credit for my glorious Sai, 2 more credits for the Mimic, and I see a Vitruvius. and Oaktown Grid. Pretty happy to see that. Oaktown Grid basically means it's not running Caprice, and more importantly, it's so cheap to trash. At 1 to trash, it's basically the same as Caprice, but it's a lot better. Because an Oaktown Grid trash from R&D is so much cheaper compared to if he actually drew it instead. If he gets to install that thing, it's going to cost me a lot more to trash. So, glad that's out of the way. The final hyperdriver is sitting in my hand and is pretty useless at this point. I don't actually have any memory enhancers. Sure, I could play net chip, but this deck is pretty low on deck slots. So at this point, hyperdriver is pretty useless. What I really want is this card, R&DI. So now I have my R&DI. I can see more cards from R&D, and you bet I'm going to do that. Because I know that all the cards on R&D are now fresh, and I'm going to go for it. Gonna spend my entire dock once again. This definitely doesn't look like a very good long-term plan, but I am seeing a lot of cards off of R&D, and I still have Levy to work with. So I can run through my entire deck again and get the Artman 1 out if really necessary. Not a very good plan, don't get me wrong. Next Ice is definitely not good for my runner deck, and I probably won't have the money to finance breaking so many subroutines with Artman 1 anyway, but it's better than running out of dock tokens to deal with Eli's and the like. Next Ice is so annoying. Anyway, this is another reason why I should be trying to win as quickly as I can right now. So he reveals a Jackson in the remote, which means that it wasn't an agenda he was trying to score, and I see an Ash. That needs to be trash. I don't want to deal with an Ash on R&D, and a beta test, and a corporate sales team to close out the game. Ouch. Pretty bad luck from our opponent right there. So I want to spend this game's post-mortem talking about the influence of this Kate deck. There's 12 influence that is what I consider to be set in stone. The 7 on breakers, and then the clone chips as well as Claude. You kind of do need Claude to make sure that Fastro doesn't win before you do. Even though you're trying to go fast, Fastro can go faster. Unless you play Claude that forces them to have a CVS on the board anytime they wish to score an agenda. So this leaves 3 flex influence slots remaining. What do I spend on that? In this current iteration of my deck, you saw the Stim Hack, you saw the short-lived Employee Strike, and you saw the Polop that I never ever got to use. Turns out the downside on Polop is actually quite significant. In part thanks to my opponent placing the Victor 1.0 on HQ, but still, Polop, it's still useful. I'm not gonna cut it, I suppose, because it's so good against Ash if he ever decided to start scoring a 4-2 in a remote, with an Ash or Oaktown Grid, for example. That would really help. Other possibilities include Legwork, Lucky Find, and Hunting Grounds. Lucky Find and Hunting Grounds give you more money to challenge heavily stacked R&D, especially against Toll Booth. Toll Booth is so annoying, and even Shapers don't have a very good solution for it. Hunting Grounds kind of solves that. Lucky Find is just a generic very good burst economy card, but we cut those in because we're not playing prepaid voice pad, and as such we do have a lot more influence to mess around with. Stim Hack is actually a much more efficient econ card, click for click, but there are not that many targets that Stim Hack has available. It's basically only Artman. Legwork is a decent idea. Sometimes you can really take advantage of the court being flooded and open up an easy win with Legwork, or sometimes just disrupt the Astro Train. That works as well. Prevent them from getting fast tracked to heaven. Other ways include Utopia Shard, that's always good. Hades Shard if you're afraid of 7-point CI. There are lots of possibilities that I can use with my 3 influence. What do you think fits best in this deck? It's not very common that a deck has so much influence to play around with, but I feel that this is the case for the deck, for this Kate deck, and how it's used will have a major impact on how effective the deck is. So if you have any good competitive suggestions, let me know and I will give them a shot. Because at this stage I'm still experimenting around with turning this deck into a tier 1 deck that could be ready for a regional season. Till then, thanks for watching and happy net running. Goodbye.